Whakalawhia, good evening. In our news bulletin for tonight, Honourable Premier Toketa Langi today acknowledged the island for the 39th Constitution celebrations. He wanted to thank all the people of Niue for the fantastic celebrations, which was made more special with the visit of the Governor-General. He said he wanted to acknowledge those who made the event successful and the hard work undertook by many on the island during the week-long celebration. Premier Talangi said in his speech during the flag-raising day reflected on the relationship between New Zealand and Niue and the changes that have taken place thus far. The agreement in accordance with the Constitution and New Zealand's assistance to govern over the realm countries. He also said there are countries New Zealand formed diplomatic ties with, but Niue, Cook Islands and Tokelau should be special because others do not have constitutional agreements or commitments to those countries. The Governor-General's visit also highlighted the celebrations with what Honourable Premier said should be an annual occurrence to have the head of the realm of New Zealand join the festive events. The developments around the island and the changes and work to ensure the island's progress forward. In other areas, the increase in old folks' pension and pensioners under the realm of New Zealand to receive payments in any of the realm countries. Honourable Premier said, all in all, the Constitution celebrations were successful. As national consultations on human rights drew to a close today, the way forward is being paved with the development of terms of reference for a new Human Rights Committee. Representatives from various sectors of government and the community have been busy trying to grasp what human rights means for Niue and how the conventions ratified and also the obligations affect our people. The 3-day workshop has been an eye-opener for many and an opportunity to reflect on what progress has been made in meeting obligations to the conventions that have been ratified by Niue.
One of the tasks was to form a human rights committee. And what we have done today is to set up a terms of reference for the committee itself. And one of the things that is involved will be the composition of the membership. Who are the right people to be in this committee? You know, how committed would they be to this committee? Because bearing in mind the formal committee, for some unknown reason, it didn't work. And so we have to really take stock of ourselves. Why did it not work? And how are we going to make this work so that we can take it ahead, future, direction, and looking after the generation, our future generation, and where we would like them to move in terms of economic development and all those important basic human rights.
The Director of Community Affairs, Gaming Tasmania, says that they're also finalising a 12-month work plan for the committee and funds will be provided by the Pacific Islands Forum Secretariat towards supporting the work of this new committee. Another point that came across during discussions was the need for the involvement of civil society and non-government organisations and the need to address the apparent fragmentation experienced in the past.
One of the key things that was discussed was rather the fragmentation of what is happening with respect to human rights. And firstly, and this is to do with all the legislations that are available and things like taking stock of what treaties, conventions that the government and the people of Niue have ratified to date. And so far, how effective have these, treaties been? And in terms of the consultation process, ownership, these are the key fundamental issues. The rights of people to know about these things, the right to make decisions for themselves, because governments by the people, for the people. In terms of education, the rights of children. And we must also take into consideration that it's not only the rights of the children, we have also to consider the rights of parents, the rights of the caregivers, those responsible for looking after our children. Are their rights being, infringed upon, or do they really have any rights at all? These are fundamental questions that we need to ask. The rights to basic education. Do our children really have, there is this education, it's a program, it's called Education for All. We really have to look down and see whether all the needs or our children, do they really have, in terms of education, are they really catered for properly in the sense that education for all, the right to basic education?
The workshop concluded today with the expectation that once Cabinet has endorsed the new Human Rights Committee, work will be able to start in 2014. The Wairarapa Times has issued a correction to a news stories that featured in the paper regarding Niue's aged care facility. The story was then picked up by the New Zealand Herald and Niue Health Department. The change was made in yesterday's edition to correct claims that an old man with dementia had been padlocked in his room. In the correction, it was noted that the patient was in fact prevented from wandering away from the complex by a bed pushed across his unlocked and open doorway. He has also taken on frequent excursions, and the paper also apologized for any confusion caused. Niue's Health Department is satisfied with the correction and look forward to supporting the project led by Matt Wilson to design and construct a day area for elderly folk at the aged care facility. Niue's diplomatic relations with Asia has substantially increased after Honourable Premier Tokita Langi attended 2 back-to-back meetings with leaders of the Pacific and 2 of Asia's powerhouses. Honourable Premier Tokita Langi said there are beneficial agreements Niue has developed with Japan and China.
I suppose the framework upon which they would allocate the resources, the financial resources of about $500 million that they had approved in the prior meetings we had last year for disbursement and use in Niue. Niue is small. It gets a bit of money bilaterally, but it also gets some money regionally or multilaterally. So I was very pleased in our discussions with them and the way that we conducted these meetings with the Japanese government. I was very pleased with meeting the Vice Premier of China to discuss the assistance that China provides to us, and also the opportunities that have been provided to us with respect to exchanges of people and so on that we have. With the number of projects that we were talking about, the new hotel, the Chinese are going to build for us, the Justice Building, we're looking at them, and also the resealing of all the roads around the island. We're looking at China to support us with that. But we also talked about free trade agreement with them, as well as the possibilities or the request on our part for preferred tax treatment on ships that are registered under our jurisdiction. In all cases, say the free trade agreement, these are long-term things that we've got to be looking at. I don't believe that we should wait until 10 or 20 years' time before we say, yes, we do have something to trade. We do have things to trade now. It's just a question of starting small, but build on it going into the future. And that's exactly what I said to them. The idea of a free trade agreement with the smallest country and the largest country in the world, in fact, is something which is unthinkable to many people. But why not? Why not be ambitious about some of these things that we are looking at?
Asked if he was concerned about New Zealand's views of the close relationship, Honourable Premier said the island's long-standing and biggest donor is aware of the developments.
I don't think New Zealand has any. I respect New Zealand's views with regard to what we do internationally, but there have been occasions in the past where I pointed out to New Zealand that we have our own separate international profile and separate international policies that we enunciate time and time again outside of Niue. We respect New Zealand's view, and we will continue to discuss with them some of those things. But it's if you like, the idea that we've suggested, we've posed to the Australians, we would be very interested in offering Niue, if all the studies that can be done to ensure that in fact we're safeguarded and so on, as a refugee processing facility for children and vulnerable women. And the view that New Zealand expresses is that we should discuss it with them. And I'd say, well, from the regional perspective, we don't discuss anything to do with regard to our role as from our own country. We have our own separate policies with respect to that. So we do respect New Zealand. We will discuss with them, but we're not asking them for approval or not. We are telling them and consulting with them, and they can express their view to us. By the same token, they're supposed to do the same thing with us, of course. I mean, it's not a one-way street. And sometimes they announce policies which impinge on us, and people believe that that's our policies as well. I make it very clear that that's not the case at all.
That is Premier Toke Talangi. First aid training is a valuable skill that gives people the ability to potentially save lives. As the year draws to an end, 2 trainings have been organised by the Health Department specifically for public servants. Workshop facilitator and paramedic Osilina Kulasea is eager to impart this knowledge with a session that started today. This week, about 20 participants have registered onto a 2-day course that will take them through the basics of CPR and other important first aid skills. According to Osilina, there are 3 types of courses that they can offer: a 4-hour CPR training course, a 2-day Pacific first aid course, or a 6-hour course specifically for school children from Form 2 upwards. At the end of the 2-day course, participants will be certified and receive certificates that are valid for 2 years. Niue Public Service Commissioner Punkapanga said that he was very supportive of these types of trainings and that they are very valuable and important to know. Whether it would be compulsory or standard for public servants to have first aid training would have to be discussed a bit further. Courses will also be held in the new year that will also be open to private sector and anyone else interested. Niue's most successful sport is about to develop 2 young athletes with a trip to train with some of the professionals in the region. 2 young ladies who received medals at a weightlifting competition in Australia are about to depart on the way to the weightlifting academy in Nomea. Chanel Tawasi and Motoria Tano will depart at the beginning of December to join some of the young lifters in the region. Representative from Weightlifting Federation, Alan Tano, previously stated the potential of many of the young weightlifters on the island and the support needed to ensure that the sport continues. The academy in Nomea also trained Narita Viliamu and Danny Nimani. The last young lifter to train at the academy was young Jack Ferretti. Weightlifting is one of Niue's most successful sports outside of Niue, and we also wish the young ladies the best of success. And those are our news stories for this week. We do hope that you can join us again next week. But don't forget to check out the Toy Women's Show Day on Saturday, and there is also the Concert for a Cause in the evening up at Niue High School.